What happens when a TV legend sits down for what's supposed to be an easy, friendly interview, but instead finds herself defending her entire life's work against accusations she never expected? What you're about to hear is one of the most unforgettable and jaw-dropping moments in daytime talk show history. And trust me, it doesn't go the way anyone thought it would. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave your thoughts in the comments, because this story is about to get intense. Marla Gibbs, the trailblazing actress who became beloved as Florence Johnston on The Jeffersons and later as Mary Jenkins on 2 and 27, arrived at the studio that morning with no worries at all. At 92 years old, she had been through countless interviews. This one, she figured, would be like all the others, light, celebratory, and centered around her new memoir and her iconic place in television history. Behind the scenes, host Sherri Shepherd welcomed her warmly. Sherri, who audiences know from The View and her current talk show, gushed over Marla's career, saying how much she admired her for paving the way. The two women chatted politely, trading compliments about their work. Everything seemed perfectly pleasant as they walked out toward the stage, where an excited live audience was waiting to greet the television icon. "Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the incomparable Marla Gibbs," Sherri announced as cameras rolled. The crowd erupted in loud applause. Marla walked in gracefully, wearing a powder blue blazer, a string of pearls, and that radiant smile audiences had loved for decades. She waved to the cheering crowd before settling into her seat with poise. "It's such an honor to have you here, Marla," Sherri began with admiration in her tone. "I grew up watching you on The Jeffersons and 227. You were such an inspiration for me and so many others." "Thank you, darling," Marla replied, her voice carrying the same warmth people remembered from her characters. "It's a joy to be here. And I've been following your career, too. I'm proud of the strides you've made." At first, the talk was smooth and easy. Sherri asked Marla about her early career, the challenges she faced breaking into Hollywood as a black actress in the 1970s. Marla shared stories about auditioning for The Jeffersons. "When I read for Florence, I thought maybe I'd be there for a couple of episodes," Marla said with a laugh. But she had such a strong spirit, such a voice of her own, that she became more than anyone expected. People connected with her immediately. Sherri nodded along. "And speaking of that strong spirit, I want to ask you something that's been on my mind. Nowadays, people are questioning whether some of those older TV roles might have leaned on stereotypes." Marla's expression shifted. She'd faced this before, and she knew the complexity. But she also knew that critics often ignored the historical context. "That's a fair conversation," Marla answered carefully. "But it's also important to remember the time we were in, and what those characters meant back then." Sherri leaned forward, her tone sharpening. "But looking back, don't you think Florence, being the sassy maid with the quick wit, always working for a white family, played into harmful ideas about black women?" The room grew noticeably quieter. The tension was thick in the air. Marla straightened, her years of experience kicking in. "Sherri, Florence was more than just a maid," Marla replied calmly. "She had her dignity. She spoke her mind. She was clever, and she didn't let anyone push her around. She was a fully developed person, not a caricature. But she was still serving white employers," Sherri pressed. "Wasn't that still a limiting message, especially when black women didn't have many TV roles at the time?" Marla tightened her jaw, holding her composure. For years, she'd defended her characters, but something in Sherri's questioning felt more personal than professional. "Florence was never subservient," Marla said firmly. "She was often the smartest person in the room. She got the best punchlines. She never lost her self-respect. That character gave people pride and laughter. Or maybe it just gave executives cover." Sherri shot back. They could put a black character on screen but still keep her in a traditional role. And white audiences could laugh at her sass without facing uncomfortable truths. The tension could be felt in every corner of the room. Marla's publicist shifted nervously in the front row. "I wonder if you've actually watched the show," Marla countered, steel creeping into her tone. "Because if you had, you'd see Florence wasn't just comic relief, she was groundbreaking for that time." "Groundbreaking?" Sherri repeated skeptically. "A maid was groundbreaking?" That skepticism cut Marla deeply. This was her legacy being brushed aside. "You don't understand what it was like back then," Marla said, her patience wearing thin. "You don't understand what we were up against, or what it meant to finally see ourselves on screen." The conversation had shifted from celebratory to combative. "I do understand," Sherri said, her voice rising slightly. "My grandmother was a domestic worker. My great-aunt cleaned houses. So when I saw Florence on TV making jokes while cleaning up after her bosses, it didn't feel empowering to me. It felt painful." Marla leaned in, her eyes flashing. "Then you should know exactly why Florence was important. Your grandmother and aunt deserved to see themselves treated with humor and strength, not invisibility. That's what Florence gave them. But maybe it just made audiences comfortable with inequality," Sherri argued. "It kept them laughing instead of questioning why so many black women had to take those jobs in the first place." The audience sat frozen, watching this supposed celebration turn into a heated clash. "You're looking at yesterday with today's lens," Marla said, her voice steady but stronger now. "We took what we had and made it human. Florence wasn't background, she was the pulse of that show." "The heart of the show?" Sherri said incredulously. "You were still the hired help." That line landed like a blow. Marla studied Sherri for a long second. "Sherri, have you actually sat and watched full episodes of The Jeffersons recently?" Marla asked. "Or are you repeating opinions you've heard?" Sherri hesitated, and the pause said everything. "I've seen enough to form my opinion," she said defensively. "That's not what I asked," Marla pressed. "Did you see the episodes where Florence challenged George Jefferson? Where she refused to be disrespected? Where her hopes and struggles were shown? Did you see her full story?" "I don't need to see them all to know what she represented," Sherri said quickly. "Yes, you do," Marla shot back. "Because what you're doing now is exactly what critics did decades ago, reducing her to a stereotype. That's what racists did back then, and you're echoing it." That accusation stung. Sherri's posture stiffened. "Don't you dare call me racist," Sherri snapped. "I'm asking responsible questions about representation." "Responsible?" Marla repeated. "Responsible would be understanding before you attack. Responsible would be doing your homework. What you're doing is dismissing characters that meant the world to millions." "I'm not tearing down your work," Sherri said hotly. "I'm looking at how it lands today." "No, you're not," Marla corrected. "You're lecturing me about my own career without listening. That's not a dialogue. It's a trial, and you've already decided the verdict." The audience was captivated, unable to look away. Some were nodding at Marla's defense, others considering Sherri's perspective. "I know what I'm saying," Sherri insisted. "Sometimes black performers had to accept roles that weren't ideal. That was survival. But we can't ignore the impact those choices had." "Don't call me an ancestor," Marla said sharply when Sherri referred to our ancestors. Her voice dropped into a deadly calm. "I'm not a relic. I'm still here. I made choices that opened doors for you." "I'm not history. I'm present," Sherri tried to soften. "I didn't mean it that way." "You didn't have to," Marla said. "Your whole approach treats my work like it's something to apologize for." "Well, I won't apologize. I'm proud of Florence and Mary. They mattered." "And what exactly did they represent?" Sherri challenged. "They represented women who refused invisibility," Marla answered. "They represented working people with humor, with wisdom, with courage. They were more than their jobs. That's what they gave the world." "But they were still in service roles," Sherri argued again. "And what's wrong with service?" Marla demanded, her voice rising. "My mother was a domestic worker." "Are you saying her life and dignity meant less because of her job?" "That is offensive," the audience gasped. Sherri faltered. "That's not what I meant," she said softly. "Then what did you mean?" Marla shot back. "Because it sounds like you think working people don't deserve respect on screen." Florence spent every week proving the opposite. Now Marla was firmly in control. Sherri looked flustered. "Our community loved those characters," Marla pressed on. "They saw themselves in Florence and Mary. They found courage in them. Who are you speaking for when you dismiss them?" "I'm speaking for those who felt boxed in by those images," Sherri answered weakly. "And I'm speaking for the millions who finally felt seen," Marla countered. "But don't you think we deserved more variety? Of course we did, Marla said. And we fought for more. But we didn't tear down the progress while fighting. We built on it. Her voice grew sharper. You're suggesting my life's work hurt us. That's insulting. These characters gave joy and pride. To say otherwise is unfair. I'm trying to be honest, Sherri said defensively. No, you're trying to put me on trial, Marla said. You invited me to celebrate my career but ambushed me instead. That's not honesty. That's a trap. The energy in the studio was electrifying. What's unfair, Marla continued, is reducing my career to shallow talking points. You say this isn't from social media, but where else is it coming from? Because it's not coming from real engagement with the work. Sherri inhaled deeply before admitting, it comes from my own experience, from being embarrassed when I saw my grandmother in those roles, from wanting something more for her. Marla's face softened, but her words stayed firm. Your embarrassment wasn't about Florence. It was about how society treated women like your grandmother. Florence gave them humanity. Attacking her doesn't fix that pain, it dismisses the progress. I'm not attacking you, Sherri whispered. Yes, you are, Marla said. You've been attacking me this entire time. My roles, my impact, my choices. And you haven't even properly watched the shows you're criticizing. Marla raised her hand, stopping Sherri from responding. She stood, removing her mic. The audience gasped. You want to talk dignity? She said with power. Dignity is taking a so-called background role and turning it into the heart of a show. Dignity is opening doors for future generations. And now you sit here benefiting from those doors while trying to close them behind you. Sherri looked panicked. Marla, please, let's keep talking. No, Marla replied. We've already talked. What I've learned is that you'd rather criticize the past than honor it. You think Florence was an embarrassment even if you won't say it outright? I never said that, Sherri tried. You didn't need to, Marla said. Your question said it all. Turning to the audience and camera, she delivered her final words. To everyone who loved Florence and Mary, thank you. Your support meant everything then, and it still means everything now. Then she looked back at Sherri. Next time you want to talk about legacy, actually do your research first. Respect the women who came before you. Don't lecture them without understanding. With her head held high, Marla Gibbs walked off the stage, leaving Sherri stunned in her chair, the audience frozen in silence, and cameras still rolling. What started as a tribute had become a fiery confrontation, a generational clash about representation, dignity and legacy. So, what do you think? Did Sherri push too hard? Or was she right to challenge how those old characters are remembered? Share your thoughts in the comments and make sure to subscribe for more powerful stories from the world of entertainment.